Hello, Priestess Mama. I'm Dania Foster, clinical naturopath and energetics therapist. I'm here to unravel the messy, sacred, and often shadowed truths about our bodies, especially the parts that nobody wants to talk about. And that could be our stubborn body fat, weight that won't shift, and the emotional roots that are keeping us stuck. So, this isn't about fixes or any dieting guilt. This is about deep healing, reclaiming your power, and learning how to listen to your body's wisdom. So, I haven't arrived at the end of this journey myself, but I have got a map and I'm working with it right alongside you. So, this podcast episode is all about the hidden roots to stubborn body fat. So first off, let's dive into the shadow elements. So let's uncover the emotional weight that you've been carrying. First off, what if your fat isn't the problem, but it's more of an armor? So I believe that our fat, somewhere along the line, we didn't want to be seen. We didn't want attention. We didn't want sexualization. We didn't want to be judged. Our body learned that hiding was safer. So have a think about like, has it always been this way for you? Did something all of a sudden happen and then you gained the weight? Did was there something in your life that changed? But like for somebody who's grown up in a bigger body the whole way through, it's something that or for my own personal journey grew with. So there's that moment of every time you look in the mirror and feel disgust, you're not just seeing fat, you're seeing this unprocessed pain. You're seeing this layer of protection, this shield that you've put up around you to protect yourself from something. So there's a lot in here around shame, around early body image trauma, and generational conditioning. So if you have grown up with holding on to extra weight through your childhood years, through your teenage years, like you've internalized a lot of the identity around that. And I just want to speak to the shame that has been held in that in a cellular level. And there's been a lot of um, voices contributing towards these inner dialogue that you've taken on. So at the moment I'm talking and I can hear my grandmother talking to my father about her concern for my weight as a child, an overweight child. And that was post parents separating was my moment where I can see it in the photos moving along through my life is that my parents separated when I was 7. And then from there, just gaining a lot of weight. So we have a lot of emotional eating that happens, filling that void within with food, things that give us comfort, things that give us pleasure. But it's also a lot about what we think that we deserve. And so I can see that there is a lot of energy around feeling worthy of that successful image. Successful body image is that slim person in my own sense. And if you don't feel worthy of being that successful person, if you don't feel worthy of being um seen in that way, you didn't want the attention, you don't want to be seen in that light, you're going to find ways that you can shield and hide your body. And that's where your body is learning to be hiding is safer. So, did you deem yourself unworthy at some point in your life? Did it not feel safe to be worthy, to be successful, to be visible? Like, where is that coming from? There's also a lot about the emotional withholding. Is that Like, and it's the same way that naturopathically we need to be mindful of, like when we're doing detoxes and losing weight quickly and things like that, about the detoxification of heavy metals, for example, or toxins, because our body actually stores things like heavy metals and toxins and things like that in our fat. So when we are going through a process of shedding and we're releasing a lot of these toxins, we need to make sure that those detox pathways are really optimized so that they can keep up with what happens when we shed that weight. So it's that can be a really important thing to think about when you're moving through postpartum and losing that postpartum weight, especially if you're breastfeeding, because that is somewhere that those toxins can release through. Okay, so thinking about where we're holding those toxins in our body, it's sort of like the physical manifestation of all of the emotional and energetic toxins that we have stored. So every time we're not processing or feeling our rage or our grief or our shame or our betrayals that have impacted us over our life, we're storing them in our body. And so this is where we may store a lot of that in excess weight, grief stored in the hips, trauma stored in the hips, the womb, the belly. There's huge energy around identity loss, especially with postpartum weight gain. Um, Miscarriages, emotional neglect is absolutely huge. So all of these things are contributing, all these energies are contributing to that emotional metaphor behind these symptoms. So, stubborn belly fat, protection from being seen or sexualized, not wanting to be um, in a dangerous place. So, if you've experienced trauma in that way, if you've experienced not being in a safe environment and holding that weight in a way to protect yourself from being an easy target, that is some things to consider. Other ways that we are storing on this could be like painful periods, unexpressed feminine power, turning that inwards, turning that against yourself, and that bloat. So feeling bloated. And that's really that emotional congestion. It's got a lot to do with our boundaries and what we accept for ourselves as well. What are we able to digest for ourselves? So I know what it's like to feel like your body is betraying you. And I know that I've looked in the mirror and felt like I just hated my body. I've hated my own being in my own skin. And even now, even though I am a practitioner, I'm a naturopath, I've got these qualifications, I still have days like that, even though I'm on the path, even though I'm a lot more healed than I was. Um, I'm still walking that path and I still have hard days. But these days I have some really great tools to lean back on. I have rituals. I have language to be able to process my pain. I have safe spaces to be able to express that. And I don't claim to be fully healed in any way, but I know that I am on a path to healing. And I'm here to walk that alongside you and be here with you. So let's talk about how it comes out in our physiology and how our hormones and gut can mirror what's going on in that emotional load. So our hormones don't just respond to food and our movement. They respond to how safe you feel in your own skin. So whenever we're working with hormones, whenever we're working with gut, the foundations that we need to build on is safety. This is always the first element to the work, is creating an environment that you feel safe in, that your nervous system can relax. Because if your body is in constant fight or flight, you're going to store fat like your life depends on it, because it does, in that energetic, in that in emotional, in the way that your cells are picking up on the energy from your body. That's what your body believes. Okay, so your fat is protective in that your body has been running in survival mode. You have switched gears out of the body's innate optimized function to we burn fat that we get from this lot of food. We move in this way and it and this is where our fat goes, and this is the healthy way that we work. When you've been running in chronic survival mode, been running on fight and flight hormones, your body has switched gears from that optimized function to a survival operating system. So calories in versus calories out isn't just a straight line for us. Yes, it's still valid, but there are some barriers that we need to address for it to actually work optimized for us. So when survival mode is on, your body slows down your metabolism. Your body is spiking cortisol, and hormone imbalances are going to force that fat retention. So we often end up with high estrogen that leads to high histamine loads, high cortisol loads, thyroid imbalances are down the line from that. So it's inevitable that our body is going to store fat when this is the environment that we're setting up for it hormonally. These are the messages, the chemical messages that our body gets from our environment to say that's not safe. So barriers that are blocking your weight loss are things like chronic inflammation, and that can be coming from gut issues, food sensitivities, which are most likely due to gut dysbiosis. So that means that your gut flora, your microbiome is imbalanced. So that's where you might not have as rich a gut ecosystem as we would like, meaning you don't have a great diversity of different strains of bacteria. And we would like to feed up and distribute some more strains of bacteria in there that are going to be supportive for your reducing chronic inflammation and reducing your influence towards food sensitivities. So building up that gut ecosystem with some beautiful prebiotic fibers, the right fibers for what you're missing, filling those gaps in, feeding and nourishing are going to be really supportive to overcome those barriers from the gut's perspective. Sealing the gut wall is going to help with those food sensitivities as well, because if we have a perforated gut wall or damaged mucosa, i.e., leaky gut, then we're going to get a lot more sensitivities, a lot more reactions to lots of different foods. And if you do some food sensitivity testing, then it's probably going to ping up like a pinball machine. You know, all of the things that you are regularly eating are going to show up as sensitive to all of these foods because the gut wall is not doing its protective barrier job. So that is just going to feed into more chronic inflammation and keep you on that track of barriers. Another barrier to weight loss is hormone imbalances. So I was just talking about the cortisol load. Being in fight or flight for a really long time, your adrenals kick into dysregulated cortisol, which leads to thyroid suppression. We end up with hypothyroid conditions, underfed thyroid, unable to create or upkeep the thyroid going with the thyroid hormone, and it slows down our whole metabolism, it slows down our gut, everything like that as well. Estrogen dominance is another big one that I see happening a lot, have experienced that myself. And it doesn't have to just mean that you have a really high level of estrogen. It could just mean that you have a high level of estrogen in comparison to your amount of progesterone. So progesterone is produced from ovulation. And if you are skipping your ovulation within your cycle, yes, you can still bleed even though you're not ovulating. It's called an anovulatory cycle. That means that you're not creating the progesterone that you need to keep that estrogen progesterone balance happening. And so therefore you're getting more anxious, but you're also getting worse periods. You're holding on to the weight because your estrogen is a lot higher than what your progesterone needs to be. It's in dominance. And so this makes things a lot more difficult for you, increases that histamine load as well. So it's also coming back to the barriers around your unprocessed emotional wounds, your dysregulated nervous system, staying in fight or flight, staying in reaction zone when, things are triggering you, not processing those triggers and just running with the reaction, running in fight mode. yelling, snapping, being aggressive, passive aggressive, all of these things. But it's also flight mode, staying in go, 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 not slowing down to look at things, not staying, giving yourself the space to drop back into safety, back into restoration time. So if your body's not feeling safe enough, it's not going to release its protective mechanisms. It's going to keep you in alert. It's going to keep your cortisol high. It's going to keep your estrogen high. I've got some ideas about estrogen and energetics, and I'll talk about that in detail in future episodes. But I think that there's a lot to be said about estrogen is the body's innate way to create fertility and create attraction, like make us look more attractive. Like just before we ovulate, we have a peak in that estrogen and we have a peak in our glow, that ovulation glow where we seem a bit more attractive to the opposite sex, pheromonally as well. And I think there's a lot to be said energetically when we don't feel attractive, that our body is energetically going to solve that problem by saying, well, here, have some more estrogen. And that will help the problem, right? But little does it know, it's creating all this downstream effect of period problems, weight gain, all of these extra things that are not serving us overall. So the body is an interesting thing. So can you actually lose weight with high cortisol and high insulin? So the brutal truth is it's like trying to win a battle with one hand tied behind your back. So it is possible, but damn near impossible without first calming the underlying chaos, all of that nervous system work, all of that sugar craving, all of those sort of things that we manage together holistically. So high cortisol signals survival mode. It slows your metabolism, it increases your belly fat storage, and it triggers your carb cravings, which therefore spike your insulin, keep that high. So it's that vicious cycle. Your high insulin is going to push your fat storage, block your fat breakdown. Insulin resistance is just going to deepen that struggle even further. So you can lose weight with both high cortisol and high insulin, but it is an uphill battle through quicksand. It's quite of a slow struggle, and you can push yourself into burnout. In a lot of cases that I see, it can get quite frustrating. So we just need to bring those back into balance. Get your insulin under control, get your cortisol control, and it becomes a lot easier to do the next step. Restore those safety signals, and your metabolic flow will come with that a lot easier. And then your weight loss journey becomes a lot more sustainable, it becomes a lot more sane. It's a lot more natural process to be able to get on with these things when you're not constantly in fight or flight. So functional testing is something that I bring to the table naturopathically. Some tests that would be quite relevant in this area would be probably the cobiome stool test. It's a microbiome analysis, and I also check in on the functional markers here that will tell us about inflammation levels within the gut, will tell us about the integrity of the gut mucosa, the gut wall. It tells us every living thing that you've got in there, whether you've got pathogens, candida, like yeast overgrowths, things like that. It tells us the right ratios of the bacterial strains that you have, the metabolites of how they break down and what they're doing within the body. Are they creating inflammation, or are they helping to resolve that inflammation? Other things that I'll want to look at is your pathology around CRP levels, so that's C-reactive protein. ESR is another one that we can check in on, and these are your inflammation markers to tell us, is your body in a state of inflammation? Getting that under control is going to be supportive for you as well. Check in on your thyroid panel, and I don't just mean TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone. That's pretty much what you get from a standard test from the GP, but I want to go deeper than that. So your TSH just tells us how hard your thyroid is working. Thyroid stimulating hormone, it's from from the brain telling your hormone, telling your thyroid how much thyroid hormone to make. So if your TSH is getting higher and higher and higher incrementally, this is why I like to get all of your background information and all of your tests, because if you've had TSH tested every year for a few years, we can see, has that incrementally been increasing? Because if you're, it's like the brain cracking the whip down onto your thyroid. If it keeps getting higher, then your brain's going, go harder. I need more. I need more. And we want to know your T3, your reverse T3, your T4. These are your thyroid hormones, and it tells us the ratios of these is going to tell us, is your thyroid actually working optimally? Is it doing what it needs to be done? Um, so getting that full thyroid panel. The other thing that's really important that I want to know about your thyroid is, do you have thyroid antibodies? Because if you've got thyroid antibodies, that means your body is breaking down that thyroid gland. And we've got more of an autoimmune condition coming into play here. So, if that's the story as well, then we need to address those antibodies. We need to support the immune system, support the gut, support the immune system, and that's going to help the hormonal shift from underneath. Hormonal testing is another one. So hormones, they're not a root cause, but they do influence the situation quite a lot. So whilst we want to know about the inflammation and the gut situation, because they are more of a root cause, what's going on. The hormones, the thyroid, these are all really big influences to your symptoms. So if we can get things like a Dutch test, which is dried urine. Now I'm going to go blank. Oh, dried urine test for complete hormones. This is going to give us a really big detail picture, fully detailed on all of the different hormones, their pathways of how they're breaking down, their metabolic rates. We can have a look at cortisol through a Dutch test as well. These things are really, really great for indicating what stage your body is in. With the hormones, and that can give us a lot more information, things like your androgen levels, like testosterone as well, DHEAS, these types of things, not just your estrogen, okay, and progesterone levels, which is so important and really good to understand. But if you want to test in your hormones, it's really important to test at the right times and with the right sort of tests for what we're looking for. So there's a few different hormone tests. Dutch test is just one of them. There's also salivary panels, and there's also pathology panels, which may be easier to get. But testing at the right time is important. So chat to me about it if you're thinking of doing something like that. So there are some great functional tests out there that can help us to understand what's going on with your symptoms. And it can give us a great pathway to say, well, we really need to focus on this, and gives us a marker to say, how can we bring this back down and check in on again down the path and see if what we've been doing has altered what we're working with and make things a bit easier for you future ways. So let's ditch food policing. Okay, this is another huge thing to go into. So I am not about counting every calorie or macro. I feel like it just fuels shame and stress, and that's going to not solve our underlying issues that we've got here, blocking our weight loss. But I think it is important to really understand the food that you are eating. So the only reasons that I would recommend food tracking, whether that's through things like MyFitnessPal or taking photos of your food and sending them to myself, whatever ways you want to track food diaries, anything like that, is if you are finding that you're reacting to a lot of different things and we need to track down the culprits. If you are struggling to see what real food does for your body and you're stuck in ultra processed foods, and you're really trying to build an understanding or an awareness of how to eat whole foods and how to build a meal plan and structure around that, then we might go back to basics of counting macros and building up for, have you got your protein? Have you got your carbs? Have you got your fats? And building the right blocks from those things. So we might have to go back to them in some instances. Note here on ultra processed foods, they aren't just bad for our gut and our hormones. I really feel like ultra processed foods are a form of self-hatred. They're a physical expression of our disconnect from our body's needs. So don't get me wrong, I do indulge in ultra processed foods from time to time, but I am not fooling myself and recognize that when I will sit down and eat like some lollies or um, things like that, that it's not doing it out of self-love. It's doing it out of something else deeper, really. If we want to dig into it, there's something else deeper going in there. They are a form of self-hatred. There is a disconnect from your body's needs. There is a big difference in seeking pleasure from a bag of lollies versus some nourishing dark chocolate with some berries. There's two different things there. Both are going to give you pleasure in the form of food, but they're two different things that are going to do different things for your body, your hormones, your gut. So have a think about how your food and your choices are really serving you and what they're actually doing. So when I tested and saw that my cortisol had been peaking, I wasn't surprised. It had just confirmed what I had been feeling, that my body was in a survival mode. And seeing that validation changed the way that I was able to care for myself. And I was able to shift out of blaming myself to having a deeper understanding and saying, I see that you are just doing that food because you're in a survival state. Having a bit of self-compassion for your stage and where you're at, and then gives you the power to shift and be like, I'm actually going to choose something else. Bringing awareness to these things is the first step. The healing. So really, you don't need more willpower. You need more safety. So you've tried punishing yourself. You've tried beating yourself down. You've tried working yourself to the bone. You've tried restricting yourself. Now I ask you if you would be open to trying a partnership with your body. So opening to listening to what your body needs, giving it that nourishment that I was talking about, the foods that are going to actually be serving. This isn't about shrinking your body by any means. This is about softening into your own truth. And the weight begins to shift when your nervous system realizes that it doesn't have to protect you anymore because you feel safe. So, ways that we can create this partnership. Let's talk about herbs in the beginning. So herbs are a beautiful way to start nudging systems, to start shifting those gears that have been stuck on the wrong path. So we could use going down like that nervous system path. We might use some nervous system tonics like your lemon balm, avena, which is oats. You might use things like passion flower for your nervous system if you've got high anxiety. You might be using some adaptogens for your adrenals, and you're bringing yourself into it more resilience around the stresses that you've got going in your life. Like with Dania, Shisandra is beautiful for collaborating with both the adrenals and the liver. Liver is so important, making sure those detox pathways are optimized, because then our body's not recycling hormones like estrogen and keeping those high. We need to keep them cleared out. So keeping your liver supported. Bitters are really good for this as well. Dandelion root. What else we love? St. Mary's thistle. Other ones that we love is ginger and gentian, bringing these herbs on board. Beautiful adaptogens, like Romania, really supportive for the hormones as well. Um, Other hormone supports, and these are going to be really depending. This is why I love doing testing, is because we need to know where your hormones are at to know which way we need to nudge them. Because if we give the wrong herb and your hormones are in the wrong space, then it's going to nudge in the wrong direction. So if you've ever had Vitex and noticed that you've broken out in a hormonal acne and things like that, it's because it's pushed your androgens too high. Because it's if you're in a luteinizing hormone dominance. So these types of things need to be considered, and they can be checked with just a simple blood test on the right day. So talk with me, talk with your practitioner, and get your testing at the right place before you implement herbs, because we are nudging systems and we need to know which direction we want to nudge them in. Also, same thing goes for things like motherwort. Motherwort is a beautiful, nourishing, stimulating herb, which is great for postpartum anxiety. But if you've also got really heavy bleeds, it's probably going to stimulate more of that blood flow because it helps with that stagnation to keep it moving. So herbs are really powerful. But we need to make sure that we understand where you're at and what these herbs are going to do before we push them in the wrong direction. Um, Other things to support liver and hormones and things like that is things like getting your magnesium levels, getting your mineral levels up, things like B6, the communicator between all of the different interactions, all of the different uh, chemical processes require cofactors like B6 to keep things working for you. Nourishing foods, your broths to heal and seal those gut walls, or I should say meat stocks, if you've seen my latest article. Your greens, bitter greens, like rocket in your salads, um, warming proteins, root vegetables, bringing that nourishment back, knowing your cycles. So, yes, tracking cycles are so important. Knowing how to eat and supplement in rhythm with your menstrual cycle as well is something that's really, really strengthening for this phase of support. So, the other things that we can do to support your healing is working within the shadow work elements. So, I work with feminine archetypes in my shadow work healing that I do in my deeper programs like the Priestess of Motherhood mentorships. In this, we're calling in the inner mother archetype to nurture and accept us exactly as we are. So, working with these archetypes to bring in that acceptance that at some point in your journey, we have told ourselves or adopted in the thought pattern that we weren't worthy. We didn't want to be seen. We didn't want to be nourished. We didn't want to be loved. Calling in the inner mother archetype to nurture and accept and hold us as we are. And that helps us to accept that healing into our body. It helps us to accept that insulin into our cells so that we're not stuck in this insulin resistance mode. Allowing ourselves to be nurtured is really important to this work. We also work in the elements of sex magic and working with the lover archetype, working with the creatrix energy to reclaim our sensuality and our pleasure elements, because this is not about restriction. And looking into different ways that we can connect with our own story, rewriting our story, rewriting the way that we view ourselves, rewriting the way that we think of ourselves. And that could be like a simple journal prompt that you could take from this episode and go and take this with you and see where you get from here is, what have you made your fat mean about you? What have I made my fat mean about me? You could do another practice that you could take on board while you ponder that little question is mirror work. Sitting in front of the mirror and just asking that question to your reflection. You could envision yourself as your inner child, or the moment where you notice that that fat started to accumulate and increase. Ask it to you in that point in your life. You can do your own womb massages. You could use castor oil packs, and which helps to release the stagnation and massage your body, give love back to your body. I use a balm that I make up called Blessing Balm, and massage oils that I make using like sweet almond oil with essential oils in it, and just massage into your breasts, your belly, and just send love into all of those places. Um, and speaking that love back to yourself. So I still have weight that I'm carrying, but now I can tell you, I look in the mirror now and I'm like, I fucking love you. Like, I love my body, and my kids are always laughing at me because I'm always checking myself out. But I do just, and I don't have, like, people will ask, like, well, they don't ask, but I think, am I on a weight loss journey? And I'm like, I'm really not. I'm not on a weight loss journey, but I'm on like a self-love journey, and I'm on this like self-reclamation journey for me. And for me, my healing journey is more about getting my cycles working vitalistically, making sure that my mental health is like on point, making sure my energy is stable and I feel safe and secure in my body. These are the priorities for where I am at the moment. And the idea of weight, it's fallen to the wayside. And don't get me wrong, there are still days where I struggle. Um, but I've stopped asking, how do I lose this? And I start asking, like, what do I need to feel safe to let go? And when I have my hard days, the questions are more like, I know a question that comes up for me is like, what am I missing? And how to give that back to myself. So that's more about the nourishment. How do I self-nourish? So I'm not treating my fat like it's the enemy anymore, but I'm treating it more like a message, and I'm treating it more like part of my story. And this free frame for me is changing everything. It's changing the way that I feel about myself. So your stubborn weight isn't your body failing you. It's your body protecting you. It's your body's way of protecting you. Until you feel safe, it'll be difficult to let it go. And, I'm not at the end of my journey, but I know the terrain now. I know the path, and I know the monsters that are under the bridge. I know those moments of darkness and shadow are there lurking. But I've got the torch, I've got my herbs, I've got my magic, and I've made peace with the parts of me that I once hated. There's no hate there anymore. If you're in that place now, I would love to walk beside you. And that's why I've created the Priestess of Motherhood mentorship. This is the deeper work. We don't fix ourselves, we return to ourselves, and we do it together. We heal in safe spaces. So, if this episode has landed in your body, in your belly, in your bones, please come and join me this month inside our Nourish to Thrive Connection Circle. It's a free, intimate container where we can start unraveling the truth. So, this month in our connection circle, we're going to be talking about the roots to our weight. We're going to be delving into this. We're going to be talking about our menstrual cycles. We're going to be talking about nourishing to balance and thrive within our energy, within our weight, within our hormones, getting them all to talk to each other. And so that we can start every spiral will get closer to feeling more and more connected to ourselves. So if you're ready to go deeper, to receive custom support, I do offer my 6-month soul-led healing, and that's the Priestess of Motherhood mentorship. So message me or reach out, email me, find me on socials. You can find me at Dania Foster Naturopathy on Instagram. DM me. Let's have a chat. And let's see how I can best support you on your path. Lots of love to you. Bye.